We're learning the second Sikha on Parshas Nasso in Chelek Chavches on page 40. The shir today is being learned to Nishmas Rabbi Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Kaltman. The Parsha Seinu the Tzeil T'Teira. In this week's Parsha, the Teira relates the following: Vayihi b'yom kalis Moshe lahakim es hamishkan, vayimshach osei v'yikadesh osei gomer. On the day that Moshe Rabbeinu completed putting up the Mishkan, and he anointed it and sanctified it. Vayakrivu Nisi Yisrael gomer, vayaviu es karbanim lefnei Hashem. The Nisi Yisrael, the leaders of the 12 Shvatim, came and brought their carbon. What was it? Sheish eglois tzav, 6 plated wagons, ushnei asa bakar, and 12 oxen. Agala al shnei anisiim. That means that for each nasi, they contributed together 2 nasiim per wagon. V'shoyle echot, and each nasi 1 ox. Vayakriv Isam lefnei Mishkan, and it was brought in front of the Mishkan. Is da in ganzen nit verstandig. So this is something which is completely not understood. Wir gefind, as nidvas am Mishkan haben die Yidden gegeben mit einer divis lev b'yaiser. We find earlier that when the Yidden donated to the Mishkan, they gave with a tremendous generosity. Biz as is given dayim v'haiser. The pasuk says what they donated was not only enough, but there were extras. Wie kommt es, as dafke Nisi Yisrael haben bei nidvas ha'agolis mit samtzim given? So now how is it that the leaders of the Yidden, when they came to donate these wagons, so they were very skimpy. Umenadav given yedere a halba agola, and each nasi is donating just a half a wagon. Agola achas al shnei anasim, as the pasuk itself emphasizes this, that it's 1 wagon for 2 of the nasiim. Nachmer, the question is stronger. Regarding the donation of these nasiim, the Medrash tells us, on Rabgebracht in Perish Rashi, quoted by Rashi, Ma ro anasiim b'melechas hamishkan lo yisnadvu tchila. What happened here? That the nasiim, when they came to donating for the Mishkan, they did not come to donate first. So what happened was, Kach amru anasiim. The nasiim said, Yisnadvu tzibah mashi yisnadvu. Let all the people give and donate what's necessary. Whatever will be missing, we will complete it. Then the Nisim saw that the Yidden donated everything. That for all the work needed, they had everything. So Amru me'ata ma'lanu lases. So now, what are we going to do? What will be our participation to donate? They brought the precious gems used for the ephod and the choshen. And lekach hisnadvu kan tchila. So therefore here, the Nesiim came forward first to make up for what they did before, that they did not donate first with the Yidden. So therefore, they wanted to correct that. Das heißt, so what this means is, as nitvas Nesiim b'yom kalas Moshe lahakim es hamishkan, the fact that the Nesiim are donating here on the day that the Mishkan is completed is given eisen verrichten. Das was shaleis nadvu kedaboi tchila is here to fix and correct this, that their donation in the beginning was not proper. They didn't come in the beginning. To express their generosity in donating to the Mishkan fully and properly. Wie haben sie das bewiesen, and how did they express this? Durch bringen a halba agola, jeder nasi. They're expressing their generosity to the Mishkan by donating a half a wagon per nasi. How could that be? Noch mehr ist nicht verstandig. The question goes even further. Wie verstandig von Pashtus Aksuvim, it's understood from the simple psukim, and as they state in Furishim Medrash, and it says it clearly in the Medrash, haben die Nisiim gebracht, die Sheish Eglis Tzav, Shnei Asa Bakar, Tzalib Lasses Es HaMishkan. It's being brought in order to carry the Mishkan when the Yidden traveled around in the Midvar. On Isaiah is given bepoil, and that's what actually happened. Wie mefurishim pasik, as it says later in the pasik, as Moshe hat vanande geteilt die agolis gefi avedasam. Moshe Rabbeinu divided these wagons for the Levium for the work that they needed to carry the Mishkan. To Bnei Gershon shtei hagolis. Bnei Gershon got 2 of the wagons, on arbas habakar, and 4 of the cattle, 4 of the oxen. Und to the Bnei Merari arba hagolis, and the Bnei Merari got the rest, the other 4 wagons, und shmeines habakar, and 8 of the oxen. Und das wissendig die gar greise Maß von die Kroshim und die Amodim. And all of this is being used for carrying the Mishkan, understanding how many Kroshim and how many Amudim, pillars, there are for the Mishkan. und haben die Hashara wegen sehr Mishkal, and also evaluating their weight. Und dazu kommen zu die 100 Adonim. Additionally, there are 100 of the Adonim, the sockets that the Mishkan was standing on. Was jeder davon say is Kikar Shal Kodesh Mishkali, a weight of a Kikar Shal Kodesh. And all of this is going to be carried on these wagons. Und befragt, leitem, wie die Gemara macht im Cheshben, the Gemara calculates this as Oirech HaGala is Chomesh Amis. The length of each wagon was 5 amas. Und Reich HaGala is 2 amas umechza. The width of the wagon is 2.5 amas. Und b'meile haben die Kroshim gedarft liegen zel gabizeh. The Kroshim were stacked up on these wagons, one on the other. 12 Kroshim if yed HaGala. 12 of the Kroshim for each wagon. According to one opinion. According to another opinion, 24 Kroshim for the wagon. Und zudem hat Ben Levi gedarft noch gehen und achten geben. Additionally, it was necessary for a Levi to follow and protect these Kroshim while they were being carried on these wagons, misaken sein, to fix them on the wagons, as I say, the way they were stacked up, that it shouldn't fall down while they're traveling. The entire way, a Levi had to follow behind the wagon. And when he sees that one of the Kroshim is moving out of its place into that space that there was in the middle of the wagon, as the Gemara explains that there was a space of an amma in the middle of the wagon, so he had to come there. The Levi would go in between, in that opening, in that area in the middle of the wagon, which was empty. And he would squeeze into a space of half an amma, because as the Gemara and Rashi explain, on both sides of the agolis, there was a half amma on each side available for the Levi to squeeze in there. Half amma is a very small space to squeeze in, so they should be able to position the kroshim. And to them, so we see over here how tight all of this is, the way it's stacked up, and the fact that it was possible that it was shifting around, and the Levi had to squeeze into such a small space. Und zu dem kommen zu die Amudim va'adonim from Mishkan. And to add to the Kroshim that were stacked up on these wagons, there's also the other pillars and the sockets of the Mishkan. Und 60 Amudi achotzer. And also additionally another 60 pillars of the courtyard. Und 60 adne nechoishe zeire. And another 60 of the copper sockets of those pillars. Und das alles hat man gedarft legen auf 4 agolis. All of this, it had to be figured out how to fit it into these 4 wagons. Is das Hepech Hage von der Divos und von Archave Vashiris and Mishkan und Mikdash, wo ein Ani is b'makam Ashiris. It seems that this is all completely the opposite of the way things should be with the Mishkan and Mikdash, where the expression that it says in the Gemara is that there's no poverty in a place of wealth, in a place where everything in the Beis HaMikdash was done properly with Anashiris. Und wenn es wollte gewähnt mehr Agolis, if there were more wagons, it wouldn't be necessary to stack the Kroshim to this degree, one on the other. And it wouldn't be necessary, this effort of a Levi following after the Agolis, running after the Agolis, and to be careful that they shouldn't move out of their place and so on. When they were transporting them on these wagons. So that's the question here, that the Rebbe will explain clearly what's going on with this donation. It's not a generous donation, and this is especially the Nesiim that are looking to correct the mistake they made in the beginning, and for what it was needed. It was so precise, and it was stacked up to this degree that it made it very difficult to manage. So why didn't they just bring generously and much more so things could be done easier? So understanding the pasuk in its simple pshat, you could simply answer on the far stellt sich nit Rashi of them, and therefore Rashi doesn't address this question. Free in Parshas Truma beneged to them was a nidvas amishkan zene gewen atze shittim is Rashi mefarish. Earlier in Parshas Truma, where the pasuk says the first time that part of the nidvas amishkan was these atze shittim, is Rashi explains from where do they have in the midbar atze shittim. Pirish Rabbi Tanchuma, and Rabbi Tanchuma answers, Yaakov Avinu tzofa beruach hakodesh. Yaakov Avinu saw with his Ruach HaKodesh, Shasidin Yisrael Livnois Mishkan B'Midbar. That Yidden in the future will build a Mishkan in the Midbar. So for this purpose, Vehevi Arazim LeMitzrayim, he brought from Eretz Yisrael the Arazim, the cedar trees, down to Mitzrayim, V'notam, and he planted them there. V'tziva Laban of Litla Mimayim Kishayetzim Mitzrayim, and he commanded his children that when they leave Mitzrayim, they should take along these trees with them. So based on the phone, so what we know from this is, as Afapi, as from Bizes Mitzrayim and Bizes Hayam, haben die Yidden in Midbar gehat, and Ashirus Meflaga von Kesav Ezav v'chulav Abanim Tevis. That even if it's true that from all the riches and things that Yidden got, first from Mitzrayim, that they borrowed and took from the Mitzrayim, and then from what the Yam spit out after the Mitzrayim drowned, Yidden were extremely rich from all the silver, gold, and other precious gems. Aber Atzishitim haben sie in Midbar gehat, nur durch bringen Arazim von Eretz Yisrael and Mitzrayim. But these Atzishitim, though, the Yidden only had of what they brought out of Mitzrayim, that was originally brought from Eretz Yisrael. Und danach pflanzen sie dort, they had to replant it in Mitzrayim, haben mit sie zu tun 210 Jahre, and they had to make sure that it was growing and it was there for them over the time of Golus, 210 years. Und danach mitnehmen sich mit sich le Midbar, and then to carry it along with them going into the Midbar. Und von dem hat man gedacht machen die Kroshim und so weiter Kli Mishkan. It's from this Atzishitim that they built the walls of the Mishkan, the Kroshim, and also other Kelim that were made from these the wooden Atzishitim. Und der Rebbe is Mispar Agol is given Narkefia Hechrich. So this could explain why when they come to donate these wagons that are made from the Atzishitim is also made in the minimum possible, whatever is needed, because that they did not have a lot of this Atzishitim. That's the simple pshat, the way we could explain this. However, this is not yet a good enough of an answer to say this. These agolas are being donated completely as a nedava, as a donation, as their generosity that the Nesim are bringing. There's no limitation about this. It doesn't say anywhere that these agolas have to be from a certain material, like the other things in the Mishkan, that there's a command, there's a mitzvah, exactly what the material should be. But here the Nesim are choosing and are donating these wagons to be used, so it doesn't have to be specifically these atzishitim. Furthermore, it's difficult to say, as b'Mitzrayim hat man nicht gekannt gefunden, Eitzim Chazakim of Tzamachin Merer Agolas. It can't be that in Mitzrayim they had other materials of wood that could be used as strong wood to build wagons from it. It doesn't have to be Atzishitim. Ulahar from Maimah Chazal, also, another thing that Chazal tell us, as gewisse Sachen hat man gekauft von Tagrei Umasaylam. There were some of the materials or different things in the Midbar that Yidden bought from merchants of Goyim that were surrounding them outside the Midbar. So they could have bought the materials needed for the agolis and to make them enough, more, what would be needed. Now, to understand this, the Rebbe first brings what it says in the Sifri and the Medrash, how we define this donation of the agolis and the oxen with them. In Sifri, Val Derech Zen Medrash, Len Planop and Posek Kach Meitam. Well, here the Rebbe actually first brings in this ice what it says in the Sifri and Medrash regarding this donation. It, as mentioned, this was their nedava. There wasn't any command regarding these agolas. They brought it. So what does this mean? It was completely their choice, how much to bring and what to bring, and that's it. There was nothing from above, nothing from Hashem about this. So the Medrash says that when the pasuk says Kach Meitam, take this donation from them, they came and stood in front of the Mishkan. But Moshe did not accept this donation. He wasn't told that they're going to be using these agolas and they should. He didn't take it. Until it was told to him from Hashem, take it from them. So and when he heard from Hashem, take this donation from them, so we see that their understanding that this will be used, this will be needed, was like what Hashem actually commanded, that it should be done. So if so, the fun is verstandig. So you understand from what the Sifri and Medrash says, as nitvasa golus ubemela misparon is kfi das Hashem, that the donation of these wagons and the number of wagons is all according to what Hashem wanted. Valderech, the Karbonis, was the Nisim haben gebracht behemshich lezeh, similar to the Karbonis that the Nisim brought following this, Lachanukas HaMizbeach, to inaugurate the Mizbeach. There are details of these Karbonis that were something that was never later in history. It was only for that time. The Oisgerechent in Razal, on Eichem Perish Rashi, as mentioned in Razal in the Gemara and also in Rashi, Uludugme, Keteiras Yachid, on Eichem Mizbeach Achitzen. The Keteiras is brought by an individual, and also to be brought on the outside Mizbeach, was Megefintes nit b'mokem acher. This is not something we find elsewhere. Umuven as Ahira Shah is given al pi askamas Moshe das Hashem. Obviously, if this is something that's unique and only being done then at that time, it has to be with the agreement of Moshe according to what Hashem says. So similar here regarding the wagons and the oxen that they brought, it was all with the day of Hashem. So even though initially they brought these wagons and the oxen on their own, and it was not accepted until Moshe Rabbeinu heard from Hashem that he should accept them. Ist verstandig bepashtes, als wenn der Eibishter hat gesagt, Moshe, yakrive es karbanon lachanukas ha-mizbeach, is the akrove gewen al pitzivi Hashem. So it's understood that when they brought their karbanis, so then it was al pi Hashem. So too over here, val derech zeh b'negeya nidvas ha'agolis. When they brought the wagons, it's all al pi Hashem. So if that's the case, the question we're addressing, why this number? 6 agolis, which is so skimpy, seemingly. So it's not a question. It's all al pi Hashem. Es ist aber nicht mistavet zu sagen, als der Misbar ha-agolis is a chuka, ugzeres ha-kosev, omkin shum tam, va'adarabe, heipach ha-svara kanal. It's not logical to say that the number of these wagons is a decree from heaven that cannot be explained, and on the contrary, it's opposite of what you would expect for transporting everything in the Mishkan. So there should be an explanation for this number, this skimpy number of these agolas here. Ubefrat, as kanal der Misbar is gewen, kefi daitam, on erst noch is nisgal geworden das der hol yaina. Especially as quoted here, yes, Hashem did agree to this, but initially they brought it with their understanding. And they understood that this is what's needed, and that's why they donated this amount. Later it was revealed that what they wanted, what they came to the conclusion was right, is according to what Hashem's opinion was as well. So if they logically on their own thought that this is the amount needed, it must be that they thought that this is appropriate, this is the right and proper, generous donation for the Mishkan. How could it be? Well, take note of another point, as by the karbonis was gebracht lechanukas ha-mizbeach, when it comes to the karbonis that they brought for the inauguration of the Mizbeach, we don't find in other places this type of karbonis and them to be brought in this way. This was also just an instruction for that hour. Is dort taimim und remazim of dem sug und misbar kabana shal nesim v'chazal zan mevayer barucha. There are reasons and hints explaining all of the categories of the karbanas that they brought and the number of karbanas that they brought, as it's explained in the Medrash at length. So al derech zeh benitten didan. Similar here regarding the agoles and the number of these agoles. By the nidvas agoles darf man sagen, as das with the nidvas agoles v'abokar zan geven b'miyetu b'tzimtzum, the fact that they donated these wagons and the oxen with such a small number and exact, which is seemingly against the rule in matters of the Beis HaMikdash, as ein aniyas b'makam ashiris kanal seif sifalef, that there's no poverty in a place of wealth, is da the ruf hatam v'asbore as azay darv zayin in der nedava. There's an explanation for this, why this donation must be specifically in this way. On this is klar in Gemara. We can see this point also clearly from the discussion in the Gemara about these wagons. As da is negeya ubad goshe, as the adgolas on zayin bediuk or bedafke, that here it's necessary that it should be, and as the Gemara emphasizes, every smallest detail about their size and how exactly they carried all the kroshim on it. Nit lenger or nit breiter, it doesn't have to be any longer or any wider. Then the space needed to place the kroshim on them. And there should be no extra space in these wagons that's not needed for the transporting of the kroshim. As the Gemara says, if then was When the Gemara says that the length of these agalas was 5 amas, frek the Gemara, lamali, ba'arba, palgasagi, why is it necessary to have 5 amas? It could be 4.5 amas long. The Gemara answered, it answers that if it would be exactly 4.5, then it would be exactly the size of the krushim. It wouldn't fit, because if it's exactly, then it could shift and move off. So it has to be a half a amma more. Similar, the Gemara discusses regarding the width of these wagons. The width was 2.5 amas. Frek the Gemara lomali. Why is it necessary to be 2.5 amas wide? But amsa opalgesagi, amma and a half would be enough. If they're so narrow, only an amma and a half wide, so then the krushim placed on them would not lie flat; it would be swinging up and down. So it had to be at least 2.5 amas wide. So we see that the Gemara is clearly pointing out that every space, every inch of these agalas in their size and in their number was utilized for carrying the krushim. So therefore we see that this is not just stam a gzeres hakosov, a command of Hashem, but everything is precise here. So we need to explain why is it being brought in this manner, that it makes it so difficult to carry and it's so precise and it's stacked up this way, when you could just bring many more and it should be enough that it could be brought and transported without any difficulty. So to explain this, Bahagdim, eine von die Shinuyim zwischen Lashon HaSifri and Lashon HaMedrash in the Maimer Azal Anal Sif Aleph. Let's take a look at the Sifri and the Medrash, and in the language of the Sifri, there's something different than what it says in the Medrash, in the Maimer Azal that was quoted before. In Sifri steht, V'chima ro Nesiim le'isnadev lechatchile kan. Why did the Nesiim donate first here? But when it came to building the Mishkan, they did not donate first. Al derech zeh is the Lashon and Pirish Rashi. Similar is the language of Rashi. In Medrash is the Lashon. However, the Medrash says, Loman is darzu an Nesiim lavoy ula hakriv tchila. Why would the Nesiim coming so quickly to donate, but it uses the term lahakriv, to sacrifice? That's usually the translation of this word in relation to a carbon. To come and sacrifice first. And by building the Mishkan, they were lazy and they came last. So the emphasis of this word lahakriv, that it says in the Medrash, so we could explain one of the differences in the language of the Medrash over the Sifri, as loite Sifri, zan die sheish aglois, agalois, ushnei asa bakar, nit in gather from carbon. According to the Sifri, these 6 wagons and 12 oxen are not defined as a carbon. Masha'enkin loite Medrash, zan azeh lahakriv, begeder carbon. They are, the Medrash refers to this as lahakriv, meaning they could be defined as a carbon. Koloshan hakos of mamish, that's literally what the pasuk is saying. Vayaviu as karbonim. They brought their carbon, and the pasuk says this regarding these agalos and the bakar. The Medrash goes on and says, Kivin shenigmar mishkan. When the Mishkan was completed, higdimu ve'aviu carbon bezrizus. They brought their carbon very quickly. So the Medrash clearly refers to these wagons and oxen as a carbon. That's in the Medrash. Euch benegeya zu das Medrash. Gefindt men in aspetting art in Medrash. We find in a later Medrash where it elaborates and says that V'haya Moshe misyarei. Moshe was afraid. Shema achas mana goles nishbara. Maybe one of these wagons are broken or will break. One of these oxen will die, and so the nimtza carbon shall Nesiim puzzle. So the carbon of the Nesiim will be puzzle. Amalek Kadosh Baruch Hu Hashem tells him v'hayu. When it says v'hayu, this means that nitan lehem avaya sheyu kayomim la'ilam. Hashem says, I guarantee that these wagons and oxen will remain. And they'll remain forever until the time that they will be needed to be sacrificed. And when was that? On his mamshech medrash and brengt verschiedene deis heichan ikrivim. The medrash brings a few opinions when they were actually sacrificed. But noiv ikrivim, whether when the Mishkan was in Eretz Yisrael in the city Noiv, or begivain ikrivim, or in the city Givain, or bebeis ha'ilama ikrivim, or in the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, there they sacrificed them. Other begilgal, or when the Mishkan was in Gilgal. So what do we see here from the medrash? That it was a carbon. But in the Medrash itself, there are 2 ways to define this. Das heißt, what it means is, in Medrash gufa kemelernen of tzvei efanim. In the Medrash, where it says that this is a carbon, the definition of a carbon regarding this donation of the wagons and these oxen, it can be explained in two ways. Leitas cholas ha-medrash ha-aleph love v'la hakriv, according to what it says in the beginning of the medrash, when it says that they came and they sacrificed, is their carbon be'ikir and their avos ha-gavra. Here, the expression of the medrash is referring to them bringing, that they are coming to sacrifice. So it's being referred to as a carbon as far as them, the Levium, not the Levium, sorry, the Nesiim donating. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the actual wagons and the oxen themselves are defined as a carbon. Like the zweite Piska Medrash. But then when you see the second statement in the Medrash, V'nimtze carbon shall Nesiim posel, Moshe Rabbeinu is concerned and he says that the carbon of this Nesiim will be posel. Here it's clear that the Medrash is adding is euch die Cheftze, was sie haben gebracht, the actual object of these wagons and the animals that were brought, the agolis and the shnei sabakar gevaran carbon. They became defined as a carbon mamish. So that's what we see here in the Medrash. So we have here two opinions regarding how we define these agolis and shnei sabakar. According to the Sifri, it's not a carbon. They're donating this for the Mishkan to be used to transport and for whatever it's needed, but not as a carbon. However, according to the Medrash, they have a geder, they're defined as a carbon. Now, on the Chol Adayis, according to both of these opinions, as pointed out, haben gedarft sein nit mehr von sheish agolis. There was no more than six wagons. Afal pivos as is at simtzum hepech hashiris from the agolis v'agbakar. Although this seems to be very skimpy, the opposite of the behavior in a situation of ashiris and wealth, when the way these agolis and bakar were brought. So this will be explained here according to both opinions. If it's a carbon or even if it's not a carbon, why, according to both opinions, is it only 6 that are being brought? The Bir Bezeh, so to explain this, and first the Rabbi will explain according to the opinion of the Medrash that says that it's a carbon. Nach dem wieder Medrash analyze mafarish. After the Medrash explains, Amru, they said, Ma yesh lanu lahavi. The Nesiim said, what are we going to donate now? After the Yidden donated everything. So they went and they brought these wagons that the Mishkan will be transported on them. Is their mamshich, the Medrash continues and says, who gave them this advice that this is what they should bring? It was the Shevet Yisachar. Because they said, Mishkan sha'asisem, the Mishkan that you build, it's going to fly in the air. When the Yidden are going to travel, how is this Mishkan going to travel? They donated these wagons that the Mishkan will be carried on them. That's the way the Medrash defines what the idea of these agolis were. So to explain what the point here of this advice of Shevet Yisachar was, it wasn't just the technical idea, the practical idea that you need something to be able to transport the Mishkan. You wouldn't need Shevet Yisachar to explain this. This is an obvious point. As this is nit nor an enyechitzayni fun the Mishkan. What Shevet Yisachar was saying here is not just an external point about the Mishkan. How would it be possible to transport the Mishkan from place to place? Now the Mishkan, vert azach, is Nisa Ba'agolis. Rather, what they were saying is that you're saying that the Yidden donated everything and the Mishkan is complete. No, there's actually something that's still incomplete with the existence of the Mishkan. And that is that the Mishkan is an existence that is finished and built, but it only could be built in one place. It can't exist in a state of being transported. So when they said that we should bring the Agolis, the wagons, this changes and this completes the existence of the Mishkan itself, that now the Mishkan is an entity that it could be carried, could be moved. Which means as follows. On the Agolos, without these wagons, is their Mishkan, Azach Velache is Perech Baver. The Mishkan itself, if you want to transport it, has to fly in the air. Because the Mishkan itself is an entity that exists, which could only remain in one place. The Agolos, Yud Bezabokar, Zenanit not a mittel Baal Mitzafir in the Mishkan Mimakim Lamakim. And therefore these wagons and the 12 oxen is not just a medium how to transport the Mishkan from one place to another. Not as poil tashinu v'gemar in the Mishkan. This is actually something that changes and completes the existence of the Mishkan itself, in the mcheftze from the Mishkan, and the very existence of what the Mishkan is. V'balt as the Mishkan is given geboit als oil moyed. The Mishkan is being built to be an oil, a tent. In other words, a structure, but a movable structure. Nit kein binyan kavua, not a permanent structure. Not again mimakim lamakim zusammen mit Yidden, but rather to be moved from place to place, together with the Yidden. It's calls man says nidak ken agalas and bakashir neisim aleim es mishkan. So as long as they don't have these wagons to transport the Mishkan, is nit nigma gavaran the asiyas mishkan. There's something that's incomplete about what the Mishkan itself is. Mishkan sha'asisem parechu ba'aver. And this is what Shevet Yisachar said. The Mishkan that is built is lacking a component of its very existence. That it's supposed to be an oil, a transported structure, or a movable structure, and it's not. It's a structure that if you'd want to move it, it would have to fly. So that's what the Nisim donated here, something that is going to become part of or completes the very Mishkan itself. Well, if according to this, it comes out as avos ha'agolis va'abakar is a gemar b'Mishkan. Bringing these wagons and the cattle is a completion of the Mishkan itself. Am end from Pa'ulis HaKarbonis BaMizbeach was then an Emechanech zu Makriv sein auf ihm Tmidim Kesirdim V'chulu. It's similar to the Karbonis that the Nisim brought for the Mizbeach that inaugurate the Mizbeach, that later you bring all the Karbonis daily and so on. So just like by the Mizbeach, mit Chanukas HaMizbeach is geworden der Gemar Asiyas HaMizbeach. By bringing these Karbonis and inaugurating the Mizbeach, that completes the building of the Mizbeach. The agalois v'habakalosis is a mishkan, so similar. The wagons and the oxen to carry the mishkan zenen biyachas so mishkan. So in relation to the mishkan, me'en karbonis the chinuch hamizbeach lemizbeach. Similar to those karbonis that are there to inaugurate and complete the mizbeach. Midi agalos v'habakar vet the gemar asiyas hamishkan. This is the completion of the building of the mishkan itself as an oil, as a transportable structure. That's what the Leviim, the Nisim that is, did here by bringing these agalos. Okay, so now based on this, we can understand why it was brought exactly, only the amount of 6 agolas that was needed. Right, so this is all based again on the point here that this is a carbon, and the idea of the carbon here is the fact that it's not just something that was practically needed to transport the Mishkan, but it's a carbon in the sense that it's being donated to become the completion of the Mishkan itself. So now Pianal is verstandig. Based on this, it's understood as Geshem wie in Mishkan und Beis Hamikdash Gufe, for PS is given an Hage von Ashiris var Chove. So just as we find regarding the Mishkan and the Beis Hamikdash itself, yes, everything was done in a manner of wealth. Is aber nicht gewen kein ein Prat u Prat, welche is nicht ausgenutzt geworden zu lieber Pole wie in Mishkan. But at the same time, there was not even one detail, and even the most minute detail, that was not utilized for something specific that was needed in the Mishkan. It could be said about this point, as the Chelek uprat welche was es miyusar und wird nicht ausgenutzt in Mishkan, the Ikri Mikdash. If there is any detail in the existence of the Mishkan, which is called a Mikdash, everything it has its holiness. If there's one detail that's lacking, is am end von Machnes Chulun Azara. It's similar to bringing an animal which is chulin into the courtyard of the Mishkan or the Beis HaMikdash. Adav chayil in Mishkan, bringing something which has a status of chayil, which is just mundane, into a place of holiness. So this is a fundamental point regarding the way everything functioned in the actual existence of the Beis HaMikdash or the Mishkan itself. That yes, everything was done in the most richest way, but everything had its exact purpose of what it was used for. Nothing was extra. So therefore, al derech zeh has been negate to the agolas ubakar velchazan chelek from Mishkan. So therefore, the same is also true regarding these wagons that are not something outside of the Mishkan and just a practical thing used in order to transport, but rather they are a part of the Mishkan itself. They turn the Mishkan into a transportable structure, and that's why the Medrash refers to it as a carbon. It has the kedusha like the Mishkan itself. As das hat gemust sein b'midah meduyekes betachlis. If that's how it's defined, it's part of the Mishkan, it must be precise, leipachis, not any less of what's needed, but oich lo yoser, but also not to have anything extra in the size and the amount of what these agolas were. As es soll nicht sein, kein ein Prat v'chelik, was wird nicht genutzt für sehr Zweck. Trug in the Mishkan, there should be no part of the wagons that are not going to be fully utilized for their purpose to carry the Mishkan. Sayin the midah bekamos, that refers to their size. Sheish agolis mit their midis muduyakis canal. The 6 wagons with their exact size, as mentioned before, as the Gemara explains, nit merer agolis and nit gresser agolis, and not more wagons and not larger wagons. And Sai and the Shnei Sabaka was fearing the Agolis, and also in the 12 oxen that were leading these wagons. Chotsch, das ist a Massa, kveide beyoser. Yes, this is a very heavy load. Darf man aber haben, as es soll sein, as es soll ausgenutzt werden, beschleimus. But nevertheless, these wagons have to be utilized completely. Die Keuches von jeder von the Shnei Sabaka was haben geführt, the Agolis. Whatever strength these oxen have, and the Agolis can fit to carry this heavy load, has to be utilized completely. Und wenn then wollt gewinnen a größere Mitte oder mehrere Agolis v'chulu, if there would be a bigger size or more wagons, is nit not as the Esafa wird nit kin Chelek from the Asiyas Mishkan. So then that added amount cannot become a part of the Mishkan itself, which was the whole point about this donation, that they are going to bring a donation that will complete the Mishkan itself. Nor demolt is this nit the shear from the Agolis. So then it's the wrong size. It's not the size of the wagons that's needed for this purpose. This point we can see that there's an extra pasuk that makes this point. Kol kesef hakelim v'goymer. All of the kesef hakelim, the silver kelim, and this pasuk here is coming to teach, pasuk that says, it's in this week's parsha actually, limetcha, it's teaching, that all of the vessels in the Mishkan were exact in their weight. Sheiklan echad echad, they would weigh each one of them individually, v'sheiklan ke'echad, and then they would weigh the total amount of all of them, not anything extra, and not anything less than what was needed. And therefore here, this explains why the Agolos and the Shnei Masa Bakar were exactly this amount. It's not just a donation for practical purposes, it's a donation of something that's becoming part of the very Mishkan itself, and therefore it can't be any more of what is needed to be utilized. From them then, another source for this explanation. So there's the halacha as klisharis e mekatshim elamalein. When you mekadesh the klisharis in the Beis Hamikdash, you sanctify them, using them to the fullest amount, filling it up completely. So here as well, the Agolos and the Bakar have to be utilized fully for their purpose as being part of the Mishkan. This is the explanation according to the Medrash that defines this donation as a carbon, and as explained, it becomes part of the Mishkan. Now, there's another explanation here that the Rebbe will explain, according to the Sifri, that does not define it as a carbon. So to add to this explanation, especially that this explanation given is all according to the Medrash as carbon, that these wagons and the oxen are defined as a carbon. Und der Rebbe Torbe sein sein kein ein Prat v'chelik was wird nicht ausgenutzt für seinen Zweck in Tragen the Mishkan Canal. And therefore, there can't be one detail or one part of these wagons that is not going to be utilized for their purpose in transporting the Mishkan. Aber l'das asifri, bal derech zele pirish Rashi, was then mefarish as mod gebracht die Agolis und Bakar losses es am Mishkan und es sind dabei nicht madgish as sie haben magede von carbon. So the Sifri and Medrash say that, or rather Rashi say, that this was brought, the Agolis and the Bakar are brought to carry, to transport the Mishkan. And they do not make this point that this is defined as a carbon. So if it's just something external being used for this practical purpose, so why couldn't they just do it in the most wealthy manner and make it easier for them to carry it properly, or easier? Yeshlavaye, the diok, in them tzimtzum, the misbah from the Agolis HaBakar. So to explain what is the precise amount that they brought and how so skimpy of these wagons and the cattle. Masa HaMishkan is given eine von the Avodas from the Leviim. Carrying the Mishkan was actually one of the designated works for the Leviim to do in the Mishkan. This is how the parsha opens. This is the work of the family of Gershon from the Leviim to work and to carry. Similar to the Bnei Merari, that this was their job to carry the Mishkan and they carry the Kroshim. Now, es ist aber move on. Es ist move on, that is, it's understood. As B'shas, der Rebbe hat angesagt, Kach me itam v'hoyu ha'goles v'abakar lavedes avedes ha'oil moyed v'nesata oisam al-levim ish kefi avidasai. So now, the Rebbe says, take from the Nesiim, these wagons and the oxen, and they will do the work with the Leviim. You give them to the Leviim that they should do their work of carrying, transporting the Mishkan. So what happened over here? the Levium are sharing their job, their work with these wagons and the cattle that are going to help them carry? That's not what it means. Is nicht given the kavana the bite zunehmen von the Levium the avodas masa b'kodesh. The point here was not that Hashem says that now the Levium are going to share their burden of or this work of transporting the Mishkan together with the oxen and the wagons. Was is the Levium's kedusha? This is the masa b'kodesh that they carry in holiness. This is the kedusha of the Levium. The point there is not to take away this obligation of the Levium. Nor the avodas masa is given geblieben mutel auf the Levium. This work of carrying is only and remains only on the Levium by marefleg in the Chelek Mishkan auf die Agolas by herabnehmen von sie, by loading the portions of the Mishkan on these wagons and then taking them off. Und euch beschaß es einen gelegen auf die Agolas and Levium nachgegangen sei v'chulu. And while they were traveling, the Levium, as mentioned before, had to follow the wagons to make sure that everything remains in its place. And Kedla Kamon, as will be mentioned here and explained again. Und die Agolas sind gewähnt nur auf Lahakel mimasoi. These wagons that were used, as the Medrash says, it's only to make their job lighter, meaning it is their job completely. But now their job becomes easier. But not to share their job, not that it's a partnership, that we're taking away part of the job and giving it to the oxen and the wagons. So for Hainu, what this means is, even after they're using the wagons and the oxen, they are not the ones that are carrying the Mishkan. Nor the Levium trogim, the Mishkan durach the Agolis. This is the job of the holy job of the Levium, and they are doing this job through these wagons. Now this explains, and the Ribber is the schema daiton l'dasal yaina. Therefore, when the Nesiim decided to bring the donation of these wagons, and in this amount, they understood what Hashem's opinion about this is. And they gave only 6 wagons. And for the masa kovet from Bnei Merari, and given nor 4 agolis. And for the heavy load of the Bnei Merari that carried the kroshim, they only had 4 wagons. Why was this? Because the avodas masa muz zayin ba'ofen, the carrying of these kroshim has to be done in such a manner as a ben Levi zol noch gein kol haderech achayre agol nachton geben, that it's loaded on the wagons so perfectly and precisely that it's necessary for a Levi to follow and run after the agala all the time when it's traveling, to be careful that it shouldn't shift out of its place. When he sees that it's shifting out of its place, he had to run into the space in between the kroshim and put it back. Because it's really the Levium that are carrying. It's just to make it lighter and easier. They are carrying through these wagons. So if the point there was that the agolos and the oxen are carrying with the Levium, and they are the ones that they're participating in carrying, so then the way this would be done is that the Levium do their part, loading and and loading it and unloading it, and then it's loaded in such a manner that it's safe and sound on the agolis, and the oxen can just travel on their own. The Levium can stand back, and now the agolis are doing the job. But that's not the point there. The agolis and the bakar are not participating in the carrying. It's the Levium that are carrying, and therefore they gave this exact amount. And this is what the Nesiim understood. What the Eibishter's Deya is, that we're not going to have the agolis carry. The Levium are going to carry through the agolis, so they gave this amount that will require the Levium to constantly be involved and there in the carrying, because it's really them that are carrying all the time through these agolis. The lesson that we can take from all of this in serving Hashem. Chazal zogin as kol ma shebara kadosh baruch hu ba'olamai lo bara dav echad lebatala. Everything that Hashem created in the world, nothing was created for no reason. What the klal is alamol lenumetum. This rule is all the time and in every place. B'chol chalkei uprati abriya, in every detail of creation. Abasiyas HaMishkan was damot is geworden basi legani legnuni, in the building of the Mishkan, where then the pasuk says that Hashem says that I come back into the world, into my garden, as noch the alle chatoim v'sam goyim gewen still Shechina, after all sins that caused the Shechina to be driven out of this world. is Yard Ashchina Lamata Ba'aretz. The Shechina returns and comes back here into the world in the Mishkan V'asil Migdash V'Shachanti B'Soicham, into the Mishkan where you build a Mishkan and Hashem dwells in it. Is Damot B'Gmar Melechas HaMishkan, when the Mishkan was complete. Areiz Gekommen Begiloi, this expresses in a very clear sense, the Kishon Prat is Nitl Batolachas V'Shalom. How there's nothing in the world that exists and has no purpose, God forbid. Now, jede einzige Prat wird ausgenutzt beschleimus for dem Tafkid. Everything in the world is being used completely and fully for what it's needed for. For what Hashem created it. So therefore, that's what we see over here regarding the Mishkan, where Hashem dwells in the Mishkan in the world. On the far, so therefore, Chodsh, the Anhage, and the Mikdash is Ba'ifin Shal Ashiris. Although things in the Mishkan and the Mikdash happen in a manner of richness, is das aber nicht in a Neifin from the Batalachas V'Shalom. But that doesn't mean that it's something that goes for waste. This is Nikke, wie jede Prat führt durch sein Tafkid und Tachlis Priyasai. It's clearly seen how every detail in the Mishkan is there for the specific job that it has and a specific purpose in creation. Und der Rebbe, so therefore, wie bald, as they've lost this Mishkan, seine genug Yud, Beis, Bakar, and Sheish, Agolis, Ba'orech, V'Reichev, Mesuyim. To transport the Mishkan, it's enough to have these 12 oxen and the 6 wagons with their exact size of length and width. Hotkin Artnit, as Mizal der Ruf, Meisav sein. There's no room to add anything extra. Und then V'Heiser, was is da, anything that was extra, darf und muss es ausnutzen in a zweiten Linie beim Mishkan. It has to be utilized for something else in the Mishkan, as it was utilized with those extra donations. Was von dem is the Hayra to Yedin Yidin in Asiyas HaMishkan HaPrati Shalai. So from this is also the lesson for every Yid regarding building his personal Mishkan. K'may Merazal, as Chazal tell us, I've also in Mikdash v'Shachanti b'Soicham, b'Soichai loy nemar ela b'Soicham, that every Yid is building a Mishkan, b'Soich kol echad v'echad mi-Yisrael, within every single Yid. I feel at dav sein nizar as jede koyach or bechol protov was the Eibishter hat ihm gegeben soll it sein lebatolachas v'shalom, that every ounce of energy that a person has should be utilized and should not go to waste, God forbid. Not eis nutzen him in dem fullstem mas for dem tachlis v'tafkitz liveliche der Eibishter hat ihm beschaffen. Rather, it should be used completely and fully for the purpose that it was created, and that is anine vreisi l'shamishes kaini. A person is created to serve Hashem. Und das redt sich wegen jeden koyach bekoyches nafshe. This refers to every ounce of energy that there is in the powers and the energies and the faculties of a person. To wissen that one has to know as b'shas eleren Torah, when one is learning Torah, is ich nit misyageh kedaboy. However, he learns but does not put in the effort to really be invested and focused in understanding fully and properly. That means that this power of his intellect is not being fully utilized. Similar regarding every detail of a person's talents. It should be utilized for the sake of heaven and for the knowledge of Hashem. And also to fulfill mitzvahs, und kiyama mitzvahs behider, and to fulfill mitzvahs meticulously, and also and specifically regarding spreading Yiddishkeit in all places. Similar is also regarding utilizing time. Even when a person has already filled his time, ungefüllt 23 Shah mit 59 Minuten von der Meisleis. Even if one has filled up 23 hours and 59 minutes of the 24-hour period. Darf sich mistabel sein, als euch die einzige übergebliebene Minute soll nicht gehen lebatolachas v'shalom. Nevertheless, you should make an effort that last minute should not go to waste, God forbid. Und das ist die Hayra, was wir lernen up from Mishkan. This is the lesson that we learn from the Mishkan. As b'shas es ist da, an ibrige Sach, was führt nicht durch ihr Tafke beschleimus, when there's something that's extra. That means it's not fulfilling its mission in this world fully, felt as demmelt in klal is asiyas Mishkan, b'meila oichas v'shalim in dem v'shachanti b'seicham. Then what's lacking is not only in that specific detail, but it's something that will be lacking in the general building of the Mishkan, God forbid, and with bringing Hashem into the world. B'shas hayid verfällt in Eisnutzen afila prata chikotten shebechalke ba'olam. Und es geht levatol chas v'shalom if a yid misses an opportunity or any energy he has in utilizing even the smallest detail, a portion in his world that is not utilized and it goes to waste, God forbid. Vert kaviyachal bilbul in the bria from the Meibishten. So this brings something that goes out of order in the purpose of the creation of Hashem. That Hashem created that nothing is for waste. And here, by something in the world being wasted, this affects the entire creation. Und b'shas jeder eine nutzt dies. Alle seine keiches of dem anin vreisi l'shamish es kaini. And when one utilizes every one of his powers and energies that he has for serving Hashem, that one was created to serve Hashem, so then this brings Hashem to dwell in the world in a revealed manner in himself and in the entire world. Warum? Durch dem, was jede Prat bei Brie führt, durch dem Tafkitz, welche der Eberste hat den Prat beschaffen. Because through the fact that one detail in creation is fulfilling its purpose that Hashem created this detail for, this reveals that in creation and in all other parts of creation, that you see that the existence of the world has purpose, and therefore you can clearly see how there's a creator. Hashem created this world. Und es wird aufgebaut der Beis Hamikdash Ashlishi, and therefore this brings the building of the third Beis Hamikdash. Ubesaychai kommt herab der Mishkan she'asa Moshe was es kaim la'ad, and in it comes the Mishkan that Moshe Rabbeinu built, which exists forever. Ha'oil, it's called Kalev Gaimer, the oil and all of the vessels of the Mishkan. In the Beis Hamikdash Ashlishi she'ibana b'meherev yemeinu v'yidei Mashiach Tzidkenu. In the building of the third Beis Hamikdash that will be built through Mashiach Tzidkenu, as gate nit durch kin ein regel of atolachas v'shalom, and no moment should pass for waste, God forbid. And Mashiach should come immediately, nor kimei tzeischam eretz Mitzrayim le'ikvam hamakim keherefayim. Like when Yidden left Mitzrayim, Hashem did not leave Yidden behind even one extra moment. Miyad mamish, immediately with the arrival of Mashiach.